right, guys, welcome back to Downtown Rams. As always, I'm your host, Alexis Kraft, joined here with my co-host, Jake Ellenbogen. And guys, it's officially summertime, and everybody talks about looking good for the warmer months, but few have the balls to do it. Well, it's time to nut up or shut up and take the easiest step to looking sexy this summer by using Manscaped. Manscaped's ultra smooth package makes sure you have the proper care for down there, and their Boxers 2.0 gives you the perfect stage to show off the new look. These products make you look hot, but your cleanly shaved nethers will keep you cool, and the Boxers 2.0 patented jewel pouch technology will keep your boys from turning any beach day into a swamp day. Dive headfirst into summer by joining the 5 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped and get 20% off plus free shipping by going to manscaped.com and using promo code DTR. All right. Just wanted to let you guys know about that deal going on with Manscaped. Jake, we are back here, Downtown Rams, episode 455, I believe. And
you are right.
yeah, 455, crazy. And last time, Jake, we talked a little bit about the player rankings that came out amongst NFL players, coaches, and execs. Everybody was asked to rank the best of each position, and the top 10 came out. We talked about the defensive positions during that list. You know, I phrased that in a bad way, but we talked about the defensive lists that came out, right?
Yeah,
And
it's
there
okay.
was,
I'm a hot mess over here.
yeah,
I'm gonna go all flu game over here because my eyes are like dying. So
well,
you're
it's
gonna have to
okay. I was
carry
like
the
having a
show.
seizure trying to read the Manscaped ad. And as Jake knows, that was like the fourth time I tried to read it. Just the phrasing of it, I
It was
kept
pretty
messing
good
up
though.
on. Thanks. I'm glad that that we finally got it out, but I was like losing my mind. But anyway, anyways, guys, recircling back to the lists. The offensive side lists came out where the players and coaches and executives from the NFL ranked who they thought were the best at each position. And we're going to go through those real quick because we went over the defensive side of things with you guys last time. And we want to talk about offense because there's some familiar faces for us Rams fans in those lists. And Jake, I think it's only right that we start at quarterback. So I'm going to read these out 1 through 10, and then we'll go through and kind of dissect our thoughts. Some of these, Jake, I'll say the quarterback list wasn't that surprising to me. Maybe a little more than the receivers, but I want to hear your thoughts first after I read this list.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, guys, based on people who are in and around the NFL, here are the top 10 quarterbacks currently in their eyes. So, number 1 is Aaron Rodgers. 2, Patrick Mahomes. 3, Josh Allen. 4, Tom Brady. 5, Joe Burrow. 6, Matthew Stafford. 7, Justin Herbert. 8, Russell Wilson. 9, Deshaun Watson. And 10, Dak Prescott. Jake, and here, real quick, there were some honorable mentions, as we mentioned last show. These lists do include honorable mentions, guys who just barely didn't make the cut according to their peers in the NFL. And I want to point out that the honorable mentions for quarterback are Lamar Jackson, Derek Carr, and Kyler Murray. And then Kirk Cousins also received some votes according to this article. Jake, what are your thoughts on the quarterback list?
I don't hate it, but I don't love it. First off, I gotta say, I mean, I'm higher on Matthew Stafford than most people, so I would have him at 3. Like I'd actually have him ahead of Patrick Mahomes because I think he's trending upward. Going into 2022, which this list is all about, I'd have Josh Allen at 1. I don't know who put Josh Allen at 7. I want to know who on earth thinks Josh Allen is the 7th best quarterback in the NFL. But I would put him at 1. I would
He was
put
ranked 3.
yeah, but the lowest ranking. Someone ranked him
Oh.
7th.
Oh, I see what you're looking at. Okay, interesting.
And then like Aaron Rodgers, I would have it 2 because I mean he's back-to-back, MVP winner. Stafford at 3. I just don't get Joe Burrow being ahead of Stafford. If Joe Burrow had just won the Super Bowl against Stafford, that's one thing. But like, I don't
I'm not
get
upset
it.
about it. You know
But
what I think it is? They're looking at pure. And again, what's weird about this list is they did not particularly clarify So with the linebackers, right? Remember how we were like, it's so weird that the way that they're ranking linebackers specifically is their play off the ball, right?
Well, it's
Rem-
the off-ball
the
linebacker
off ball linebackers.
in
So with the
general.
quarterbacks, there's
So,
no like, it's just very broad. So my
yeah.
assumption is just who they think pure talent alone, and I think like I can see why people would look at like he's so young and he's so good, right? So again, I think they're ranking it more on like where they think these quarterbacks lie pure talent wise. Because for example, Tom Brady is ranked number 4, and you know, I would say based on where he's at right now, I probably wouldn't have him that high. But if you're looking at just like general over the course of their career talent or where you expect them to end up, I don't know. It is weird
Which is
because
not what they're doing. They're essentially saying going into
best right now.
2022, and that's why I just don't understand how you look at what Matthew Stafford did, this past season, and you're like, yeah, he didn't do as well as Burrow going into this year. And I mean, if you want to put anybody super high, it's Justin Herbert for me. I know
Yeah.
he didn't make the playoffs, but he played those 2 seasons. Burrow got hurt in the middle of his first season, and then this was his true full first season.
Mhm.
Herbert is just on an absolute tear. He's doing things that, I mean, he's on pace to have the most touchdowns ever. I know it's super early on, but nobody has had this many touchdowns through, however many games he's played. So I think Herbert, you could argue being in the top 5. I can't take Tom Brady out of the top 5. I mean, to me, he is 5 for me, but I have Stafford at 3, Mahomes at 4, Brady at 5, Herbert at 6, Burrow at 7. Lamar Jackson being off this list and, in the honorable mention list is ridiculous. He's 8 for me. Russell Wilson is 9. And then I'd say Kirk Cousins is 10. I think Kirk Cousins is extremely underrated. I think he is now going into 2022 coming off a fantastic season. You wouldn't know it because of who was coaching last year. I think now with Kevin O'Connell, there's going to be some big time, moves with him. I think, this is going to be potentially his biggest season yet. And furthermore, I'll say this: it just came out about a day ago that Mike Zimmer and him never saw eye to eye. So like Mike Zimmer didn't
Yeah.
like him. He was there for years. That's kind of the thing. Is now I feel like Kirk Cousins is going to have some sort of comfortability that he had when he had Sean McVay back with Washington. That's kind of the vibes I'm getting. And so I had
Hmm.
Cousins at 10. Prescott at 11, Murray at 12, and Derek Carr at 13. But I really had an issue with Lamar being snubbed and Matthew Stafford being below Joe Burrow. Those are my only like big issues, I think, with the list.
So I have not gone and made my lists yet, but I can say I don't have too much of an issue with it. I think Aaron Rodgers is number 1. Like again, if we're going on just pure talent alone, I would have Aaron Rodgers, and then honestly, like I probably would put Patrick Mahomes, but I kind of like Josh Allen more than I like Patrick Mahomes as of late. I see a little
Oh, I
more
do too.
promise in Josh Allen. So I'm inclined to almost, go Rodgers, Allen, Mahomes, if I'm looking at pure talent alone. Um, then after that, I mean, I gotta go. It's tough for me. I would say Stafford 4, but I probably would be persuaded to put Tom Brady because it's hard to like if I'm looking at talent right now though I got to go Matthew Stafford and then Tom Brady. So I think that's my top 5. I think I would have Stafford at 4 as looking at how players are playing right now. If we want to go into all-time like
Which
play
is the
legacy,
point of the list. So you and
right.
I have
So
the same 5.
but I would put Burrow. I think I would put Herbert than Burrow.
That's what
I put
so we would
Herbert
have the
6.
same
Yeah.
7, just different order.
The only thing is you're a lot higher on Lamar Jackson than I am. I would probably put I'd probably put Russell Wilson at 8, which is where he falls on the list. I don't know. You know what? I would probably put Lamar Jackson at 9, and then I would
So
put,
the
so I
same
guess
9.
similar.
And if you
I'm a
say
little
Cousins at
torn.
10, then we're the same.
No, I would put, I'd probably put Prescott at 10 where he's at. I don't know. It gets complicated because it's just so like I feel like once you get outside the top 7, then it can get kind of like shaky, and it's like some of these quarterbacks you don't know how they're going to perform this year, so you're just looking at last year. But like there are a
Yeah,
lot of quarterbacks, like I don't have a ton of faith in the Cowboys next season, for example. So like
I don't
I
either.
could see Dak Prescott just totally dropping several spots in that list. So for I'll be like, "Oh, he's 10," but I'm kind of saying that with not a lot of confidence and knowing that I don't think that's actually where he's going to fall going into next season. But
Two
okay, so I
two
guess
dark horses for the top 10 before we go into the running backs. Who would you say? Like two dark horse quarterbacks that aren't even on this honorable mention list that you wouldn't be surprised if all of a sudden they just shot up into the top 10.
oh man.
If you can only think of one, just do one, but or if there are none, then just say none.
I'm going to say shit. Sorry.
You're
I
gonna say
forgot that we
shit.
were on I forgot that we were on Downtown Rams and not
Code
AK Live.
switch. Code switch.
Okay, so sorry, my mind was going to the quarterbacks that I think are going to have a breakout season, but that's not what you're asking. You're saying top 10.
Well,
Right?
like, dark horse.
If I'm in okay, if I'm in the NFL and it's 2023 next year, the same list is coming out. I would not be surprised if like okay, well duh, Matt Ryan. Okay, also that's a little confusing to me. I just realized he wasn't even on the honorable mentions.
Yeah.
Um
But I agree with you. I think he would be there. And then I wonder if we have the same too. Because
I think
you probably know who I'm thinking of.
well, I kind of wanted to say I was like thinking about Zach Wilson and Mac Jones, but I don't know about top 10 because I was like thinking breakout because I think both of them are going to have really good seasons, but I don't know that I can say that they would be top 10, like regardless of how good either one of them play.
Yeah,
Man,
I'm
I
saying
don't
I'm
know.
saying
What?
if someone came to you from the future and tells you there's going
No, I
to
know.
be somebody not on this list, there's going to be two guys not on this list that end up in the top 10 at the end of the season as far as statistically, who would they be? I would say Matt Ryan and I would say Zach Wilson. That's
I
what I
think
would do.
that's what I would say. Matt Ryan and then Zach Wilson / Mac Jones. But I do think that Zach Wilson has a lot better weapons than Mac Jones going into next season. So I
Yeah.
think he has a lot more opportunity. But okay, top 10 running backs. All right, guys, here are the top 10 running backs. I'm going to list these off. And then, Jake, I want to hear your thoughts first after I list these off. So, according to NFL players, coaches, and executives, here are the top 10 running backs currently in the NFL. 1. Derrick Henry. 2. Jonathan Taylor. 3. Nick Chubb. 4. Dalvin Cook. 5. Alvin Kamara. 6. Joe Mixon. 7. Christian McCaffrey. 8. Najee Harris. 9. Aaron Jones. 10. Javonte Williams. The honorable mentions are Austin Eckler, Ezekiel Elliott, and Saquon Barkley, with Josh Jacobs, Miles Sanders, and Antonio Gibson also receiving votes. Jake, what are your thoughts on this?
This is really interesting. There. I mean, you could look through the list. Highest ranking one for Henry, one for Taylor, one for Chubb, one for Cook, one for Kamara, one for Mixon. Um, you have a lot of number one rankings on here from these. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it seems to be a very polarizing position because I think some are assuming that Derrick Henry is in a favorable role where he's going to get the ball more than anybody else. And Jonathan Taylor's in a favorable role where they use him as a pass catcher as well. And Nick Chubb is just being used, he's being used, in accordance to also getting Kareem Hunt the ball. And then you have Dalvin Cook. I will say this. I think Derrick Henry is the best running back. I understand Jonathan Taylor just had an incredible year. Derrick Henry is the best pound for pound running back in the league. I don't see it being
Yeah.
relatively close. Jonathan Taylor is incredibly exciting. And I think when it's all said and done, he'll probably end up being the better back. But I think Henry right now is better. And I think Kamara needs to get some respect. Like, I know he got a first place vote, but ended up being way further than I expected. He's 3 for me. What he has done in the receiving game is just nothing, short of amazing. I mean, he has just been incredible in the receiving game. He's never had 1,000-yard season rushing, but he's been so dynamic in the receiving game. He has, I think it's like over 40 touchdowns. I'll have to look that up, but he has just been incredible. So he's 3 for me. I think he's a little low, and he's had 67 total touchdowns. He's had 20 receiving. So yeah, I mean, he's been great. And then I have Nick Chubb, who Nick Chubb is, the best pure runner after Henry. He's not really utilized much in the passing game. Joe Mixon comes in at 5 for me. He's just become so good. I mean, it's really impressive to see how much his game has developed. Aaron Jones would be 6. I think he's maybe the most disrespected running back in the league. This guy averages 5.1 yards per carry for his career. He is just incredible. And I think he's, punished for being in the Aaron Rodgers offense, which I don't see how that's fair. Then I would probably say Dalvin Cook, and then Austin Eckler. And then the rest of the list kind of gets muddy for me. Javonte Williams, highest ranking was 2. I
Yeah,
mean,
that's surprising.
it's pretty high for a guy that isn't even going to be the number 1 guy, because he's going to be splitting time again with Melvin Gordon. They signed him to a 2-year deal. So, I mean, do I think Javonte Williams is very talented? Of course. But there's a reason they brought back Melvin Gordon. And honestly, Melvin Gordon has an argument to be on this list as well. So, I mean, I'm surprised to see him over Eckler. Eckler's ability in the receiving game, plus he's coming off his best season as a pure runner, 911 yards rushing. Ezekiel Elliott, I just think is just a product of his touches. Another 1,000-yard season, but if you give those to Tony Pollard, the stats show that he would have probably 1,200 yards, maybe even 1,300 yards. He's just a better runner. And then Saquon Barkley, I wouldn't rank Christian McCaffrey or Saquon Barkley, because they're both coming off injuries. It's hard to know where to gauge them at this point. Josh Jacobs is pretty much, the most underrated, I think, on this list, because he's also receiving votes. Miles Sanders is a little overrated there. And I would say Antonio Gibson is a name to watch out for this year as somebody that could be up there. And I'll give you 2 more names. Breece Hall of the Jets. And I just think the Rams are too much of a committee approach. I can't see Cam Akers being in there. I know he wants to be top 3. He said that. But let's look at the Jaguars. I think you liked him, ETN. I think ETN in his, first year, like his true first year, because he missed all of last year, he dodged all that, chaos last year, essentially. I feel like this year, being his rookie year, is probably going to be more beneficial for him, that he missed last year, which was just not really a good
A
year for
nightmare.
anybody involved.
Yeah, a nightmare for Jacksonville. Yeah, so for me, the top 4 of this list, I agree with. Derrick Henry, Jonathan Taylor, Nick Chubb, Dalvin Cook. I would put personally Aaron Jones at 5, and then Alvin Kamara, then Joe Mixon. Then I would probably have Ezekiel Elliott, if I'm being honest. I do like him a lot. I think Christian McCaffrey would probably be in there. The problem is he can't stay healthy. And a side
No.
note about Saquon Barkley, when Saquon Barkley is 100% healthy, I think he's a top 5 running back in the NFL, personally. The problem is he
Well,
can't ever stay
yeah.
healthy. So it's hard
Well, I
to
mean, it's the same
put
thing
him
with
there.
CMC.
Right. So it is hard to be confident in putting them in your rankings. I don't mind Najee Harris being there. Javonte Williams, I think that's a little high. Yeah, I really like Josh Jacobs, Antonio Gibson. I think
I think
last year.
Najee could be number 1 at some point down the road. What I will say is the highest ranking of 3, I think, is fair. I think people look at his yards per carry, Alexis, and they're like, well, 3.9, that's not that impressive. He had over 300 carries, almost had 400 touches, and he had one of the worst offensive lines in football. So is very Steven Jackson-esque, and I just don't feel like he gets enough credit because of that. There's a lot of I don't see the hype behind him. He only had 3.9 yards per carry. I mean, what was Steven Jackson's for his career? Maybe 4? I mean, that doesn't really mean everything. Like, yards per carry average can be a nice tool, but it can also really, nullify the point. I mean, he was a 4.1 yards per carry guy for his career. You know what I'm saying? So,
Mm-hmm.
um, I'm not really a big fan of using the whole yards per carry. And by the way, Jackson, a year he was a Pro Bowler in 2010. He had 1,200 rushing yards on 330 rushing attempts, kind of similar to Najee Harris, and he ran 3.8 yards per carry.
Yeah,
You know,
I agree. It's a good point. Let's get into the wide receivers. Um, okay, so wide receivers, top 10, voted on by NFL players, coaches, and executives. Let's go. Number 1, Devontae Adams. 2, Cooper Kupp. 3, Jamar Chase. 4, Justin Jefferson. 5, Tyreek Hill. 6, Stephon Diggs. 7, DeAndre Hopkins. 8, Mike Evans. 9, Debo Samuel. 10, DK Metcalf. Honorable mentions are Keenan Allen, AJ Brown, Terry McLaurin, Chris Godwin, Michael Thomas, CeeDee Lamb, Mike Williams, and players also receiving votes are Adam Thielen, Tyler Lockett, Deontay Johnson, Odell Beckham Jr., and T. Higgins. Jake, what are your thoughts?
I like that OBJ received a vote or however many votes he received. Our guy Deontay Johnson from the Downtown Rams podcast representing. Tyler Lockett not even getting honorable mention is disrespectful in my opinion. I think he's actually better than DK Metcalf, and you know how big I was on him. I think Adam Thielen as well, kind of disrespectful there. CeeDee Lamb a little too early, I think. Um, and then I do not get what Keenan Allen has to do to get some respect. He is top 10. I don't care what anyone says. He is fantastic. And you would think him playing in such a prolific offense now with Herbert, he would get the attention, and he's still not in the top 10. That's weird to me. Um, Metcalf was kind of a disappointment last year. I thought he can be so much better, and I feel like his ceiling. It's like you know how we were talking about earlier today. You mentioned it like the Cardinals drafted like 3 pitching prospects or whatever. With
Yeah.
minor league baseball, guys can go from this guy's the next Albert Pujols to this guy. Well, his ceiling is diminished. Why is not the case in the NFL? Like, haven't we noticed that DK Metcalf's ceiling has started to diminish? No one wants to admit it, but he is not on the track he was in 2 years ago. So I do kind of have issue with that. I think Debo at 9 is ridiculous. He was fantastic last year, and going into 2022, he should be higher. If this list is going into 2022, then they're out of their mind if they're going to include DeAndre Hopkins at 7. The idea of Tyreek Hill, who's now having a significant downgrade to go to Tua Tagovailoa. If this is going into 2022, he should not be 5. If this is going into 2022, Cooper Kupp, who just won the Super Bowl MVP, Offensive Player of the Year award, the Triple Crown for the first time since 2005 with Steve Smith, and furthermore, just had 2,400 receiving yards, 22 touchdowns, and 178 receptions in a 21 game season when you factor in the postseason, and he's number 2. I don't get that. Like, if this is going into 2022, if that's what the list is, and the list says receivers for 2022, it's for 2022. I don't know
Well,
how you think he is not number 1 going into this season.
guys, once again, just want to point out that you can get 20% off and free shipping with code DTR at manscaped.com. That's 20% off and free shipping with the code DTR at manscaped.com. There are so few perfect summer days. Don't let hot, sweaty balls ruin them. Stay fresh, clean, and smelling good with Manscaped. Well, right. And the way, again, so the way that it's interpreted, it says the objective is to identify the best players right now for 2022.
Yeah.
Um,
So I
I
just
can understand why, again, I think that whether for better, for worse, for right or wrong, the way that the people were ranking these players is based on just how they perceive their talent. So I can understand coming from the point of view of like thinking Devonte Adams is a slightly better receiver than Cooper Kupp all around, right? I mean, a lot of people think Devonte Adams is the best receiver in the league. So I don't have an issue with Devonte Adams ranking higher than Cooper Kupp. Now, who would I take, Devonte Adams or Cooper Kupp? I might take Cooper Kupp, if I'm picking, right? But based on pure talent alone, I don't have an issue with people thinking Devonte Adams is a better receiver, whatever. I think it's great. I mean, I think personally, this list for me is exactly how I would rank it. The only difference that I would make, again, I wouldn't have an issue if you swapped Adams and Cup, but I do think overall I can see why people think that Adams is a better all around receiver. But number 10, I do think, as much as I also love DK Metcalf. I think 10 is maybe a little high for me. I personally I think it's pretty interchangeable at 10 for me. Like I'd probably put Keenan Allen there or even AJ Brown before I'd put DK Metcalf.
Yeah,
Personally.
Keenan Allen, I totally agree with. I mean,
So
100%. And Stephon
yeah.
Diggs, honestly, is kind of getting a little disrespected being below Tyreek Hill.
I
You
just don't
know,
think Tyreek Hill I don't know, and people get so mad when I say this. Like, is Tyreek Hill actually a good receiver, or is he just super fast? That's always my argument with
well,
Tyreek Hill. He's
he
made a
is
lot of good
actually a really
plays.
good route runner.
Yeah,
Um,
because of his speed. He's made a lot of good catches because of his speed. But in terms of pound for pound actual receiver, I wouldn't say that he's a top 5 receiver. I don't have an issue putting him there. Like I said, I pretty
not in
much agree with this
Miami.
list. Not No, I do think he got a downgrade in Miami, and I think that
Yeah, and
that's
I
pretty.
don't feel like this list accounts for that. And I don't know how Justin Jefferson is ranked fourth. As great as Jamar Chase is still missing things in his game that Justin Jefferson has already exhibited. They are the same age, and Justin Jefferson has a year on him. And I'm a big fan of both players. I had a higher grade on Chase, and Chase will probably end up being the better player. But Justin Jefferson, now with that Sean McVay styled offense that is going to cater to the strengths of Kirk Cousins, if he does what Cooper Kupp did last year in some capacity, I won't be surprised. And so for him to be
Yeah.
fourth is a little surprising to me because this is somebody that came into the league and just right away, I mean, you look at last year, he had over 1,600 yards. He finished second to Cooper Kupp in receiving. If you look the year before, on only 88 receptions as opposed to 108 last year, he had 1,400 yards. He's had 17 touchdowns. I mean, this guy's over 3,000 yards in 2 seasons in the league. So,
Mhm.
being the same age as Jamar Chase, and I don't know the exact when they were born, right? But I just know they're both 20, they're both 22. So that is a little surprising to me to see Justin Jefferson rated that low. And the lowest ranking, I want to know who on earth rated him outside the top 10.
NFC North fans.
I'm sorry, the guy just had 1,600 yards
No,
last
I
year,
know.
folks. What is
I
wrong with you?
I think him and Chase again are very very close in my eyes. I do think Chase has the benefit of just having the season that he had last season, kind of the flashy breakout season, going to the Super Bowl again. So
Oh,
it
big
makes
time.
sense why recency bias, right? Why people voting he would come to their mind really really quick. I do agree. However, I think Jefferson has proven a little bit more than Jamar Chase has, but I don't have an issue with it. I think that they're very, very close with that ranking.
I wouldn't put
LSU.
Hopkins in the top 10.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah,
The
I mean,
suspension, the injury, he's 30. I don't know.
but again, I don't think they're thinking like that when they're voting. I think they're just thinking of okay, who in my mind are the top 10 most talented receivers, pure talent wise,
Well,
which
and
is where I think they were coming from.
he's got a lot of respect among his peers because he's been doing it and he was doing it with Houston. So, I do think that came into it, but I don't know. That
Yeah.
the knee injury that caused him to have to get surgery and then the PED violation, I'm not putting him in the top 10. I think Chris Godwin got a little snubbed, in my opinion. Keenan Allen did as well, but let's move on to the tight ends because we could talk all day about the wide
Yeah.
receivers.
So tight ends. Number 1, George Kittle.
I
Number
love it.
2, Travis Kelce. Number 3, Darren Waller. Number 4, Mark Andrews. Number 5, Kyle Pitts. Number 6, Dallas Goedert. Number 7, TJ Hawkinson. Number 8, Dalton Schultz. Number 9, Dawson Knox. Number 10, Hunter Henry. Honorable mentions: Mike Gesicki, Pat Fryermuth, Zach Ertz, and David Njoku. Players that also received votes were Jonnu Smith, Tyler Higbee, CJ Uzoma, Noah Fant, and Austin Hooper. Jake, what are your thoughts on this? We already know that you're happy with the George Kittle number 1.
I just think it's funny that Njoku is an honorable mention. This guy has 1,754 yards for his entire career on 65 games. I don't get it. I don't know what the big deal is with him. They're like, oh, well, he got paid now, so the Browns, he's going to be good. Now, my thing is, I think the list is pretty good. I will say this. I think Tyler Higbee had a very good year last year, 560 yards receiving on 61 receptions for 5 touchdowns. In an offense where Cooper Kupp almost set the freaking record. In an offense where you had OBJ, you had Robert Woods, you had Van Jefferson go over 800 yards. I'd make the case Tyler Higbee should be there. You know, he's just as deserving as Hunter Henry.
I agree.
I think Hunter Henry, obviously, he had more of the offense, right? Like he was utilized more. So he had 9 touchdowns, but he only had 603 yards on 50 catches. So, obviously, again, like the average is there, like he averaged more yards per catch than Higbee. But I'll say this over and over again: Higbee, and this is going to be a separate discussion we have to have. Higbee is the greatest tight end in Rams history. That's not saying a ton because there haven't been a ton of them, but he's officially become the greatest tight end in Rams history, in my opinion. And it's time for us to finally start giving this guy props because he took a back seat. It's not that he isn't capable. If you don't think that Tyler Higbee could go for 800, 900 yards, you're not paying attention. Like this guy clearly has taken a back seat to Brandon Cooks, to Sammy Watkins, to Cooper Kupp, to Robert Woods, to OBJ, to Van Jefferson, to Todd Gurley. I mean, that's the thing, is that like he's always kind of been in the background, and when they need him, they call his number, he comes up and makes a big play. I don't think he leads the Rams in touchdowns all time for tight ends. I know he leads in receiving, and I believe receptions, he's almost there. His biggest season was 2019. He had 734 yards, which isn't talked about. And I think that's ultimately why he got paid. The Rams don't underrate him. I think the Rams feel very highly about him, and they know he's taking a back seat. But do you see what I'm saying? Is if you
Yeah,
put Tyler Higbee in a high volume role, he could get 1,000 yards in this league.
I
So I,
agree. I would
I,
have him
I
at 10.
disagree with the Higbee placement. But that's the only one I really disagree with, Alexis. All in all, Knox, Schultz, I like that they're getting credit.
I do too. I think this is a great list. I would have personally Tyler Higbee at 9 and Dawson Knox at 10.
I'm there for that.
I'm not like, I wasn't super high on the Patriots tight end. I think it was just like they paid Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry so much money. And then I felt like it wasn't as impressive as everybody thought it was going to be. I didn't think that like they were really like, they did fine. I mean, Hunter Henry obviously had a
Well,
lot of
Jonnu did
production.
not.
Jonnu did
Jonnu had a
not.
bad year,
But like Hunter,
294 receiving yards.
well, that's what I'm saying. Super underwhelming, and I think Hunter Henry was as well. But like I can see from a production standpoint why people would say he did fine. But yeah, I think I would put Tyler Higbee 9 and Dawson Knox 10. Other than that, I pretty much agree with this list. I think, yeah, I just think there's kind of a pretty big drop off, honestly. Like, unlike with the wide receiver position, after Kittle, Kelsey, and Waller and Andrews, I think there's a significant drop. Kyle Pitts, it might be a little high at 5 for me. Like already putting Kyle Pitts
Well,
at but I
I mean,
like him
that's
a
going to
lot.
happen when you have 1,000-yard receiver. Because think about this: 1,000-yard tight end is just not common. Like the tight end position is a known position. It's probably the toughest position to play because you have to learn how to basically be an offensive lineman and a wide receiver. So that's why I do see why Kyle Pitts is ranked that high. Um, I gotta say, I feel kind of bad for Logan Thomas because he moved from quarterback to tight end. He looked like he was going to be a star. And now moving to tight end, it was really showing that he suffers a season-ending injury. Didn't even get receiving votes. I mean, Uzama got receiving votes, and he's not even the best tight end in New York. Noah Fant got receiving votes. Austin Hooper of the Titans got receiving votes. Noah Fant is an interesting one in Seattle, though, I will say, because he got traded with Drew Lock. So if Drew Lock
Mhm.
plays, they have that chemistry. I could see him being the go-to guy over the middle security blanket. And Pat Fryermuth had a pretty solid year last year. So, look for him to take another step. I guess now they look at Alexis Gesicki being outside of the top 10 is a little weird to me. Guy had over almost 800 yards last year. In an offense where Waddle had almost, I think he had 1,000 yards. So that's a little weird. But again, I do like this list, and I like where Goddard's placed because I think he's underrated, or at least I thought he was until I saw this. I think he's properly rated. Hawkinson needs to do more. Like he's put here like, all right, that's good. You need to show up this year because Hawkinson simply has not done enough for what I think he can be, and I think a lot of it is injury ridden. Only had 367 yards his first year, played 12 games. His second year, he plays 16 with Stafford. He gets 723 yards, and then this past year, he's 583. He doesn't find the end zone enough, and he honestly doesn't light it up with the yards. I want to see him take another step before I even consider moving him up. But I really do like the list.
Well, Jake, lastly, it's the offensive tackles. They did not do a list for interior offensive linemen, which
I
I
have
think
an
is
issue with
weird,
that.
but I
I have an
think it
issue with
might be
that.
coming out tomorrow
Hmm.
because I've noticed that they've done these every like sporadically, and it's been 3 days since the offensive tackles come out. So we might just be a day early. So I guess we can talk about that briefly on our next episode. But that ranking, if I assume that they're doing it, is not out. So, Jake, with the offensive tackles, we have number 1, Trent Williams. Number 2, Tristan Wirfs. 3, David Bakhtiari. And I'm going to pronounce a lot of these wrong, as I always do. 4, Rashawn Slater. 5, Tyron Smith. 6, Laramie Tunsil. 7, Lane Johnson. 8, Ronnie Stanley. 9, Ryan Ramczyk.
Ramchick.
Ramchick. Okay, I knew there was something weird there. Okay. 10, Taron Armstead. Honorable mentions, Orlando Brown Jr., Sewell from the Detroit Lions. This list isn't loading. Okay, Jordan Mailata.
I like him a lot. I
Taylor
think he's the
Lewin.
former rugby player.
Yeah. And they just gave him a big deal, too, in
Yeah,
Philadelphia.
no, he ended up working out extremely well.
um, Taylor Lewin, Colton Miller, Taylor Moton, and Brian O'Neill. Players also receiving votes were Mekhi Becton, Braden Smith, Deion Dawkins, Donovan Smith, and Lael Collins. Sorry, that whole thing was so chaotic. My computer froze. Yes, okay, I got all of them.
So Havenstein just doesn't even get any credit. I don't get it.
Nope.
I'm not
What's
saying he
interesting?
has to be in the top 10, but like not even other receiving votes. I don't know if I agree with that.
I actually don't have a problem with this list. Um, it's tough with offensive tackles because it's a very unglamorous position. So I think that a lot of players could get votes just based on like people they like. It's like one of those things where it's kind of like
Yeah.
if you do your job, you do it solid, like you're good, right? There's no stat line particularly. I mean, there are some stat lines with the offensive line, but it's not like defensive tackle where you're going for sacks. It's not like you can count touchdowns. It's basically just like, there's all these quotes about how the offensive line just does never will get enough credit because they don't show up in the stat sheet that often. they're just expected to do their job. And when they mess up, then it gets noticed. When they do good, they're hardly ever praised. So it is nice to see that they did, that these rankings came out. I mean, I don't have a problem with this list, honestly, at all. I mean, Trent Williams makes sense. If Andrew Whitworth we're still playing, I think he'd be pretty high on this list still.
Oh, yeah.
Even so.
Well, I'm actually, Alexis, looking at the PFF premium stats because I just wanted to see how they rank the offensive line. Trent Williams is 1. He's the highest rank for them. Tyron Smith is 2. Mailata is 3. Whitworth was 4 last year. Colton Miller is 5. Tristan Wirfs is 6. Ryan Ramczyk is 7. Rashawn Slater 8. Rob Havenstein 9. And Lane Johnson 10. So there you have it. PFF has Rob Havenstein as the 9th best offensive tackle. And from the way I'm seeing it, he is let's see here. It looks to me like he might actually be the 3rd highest right tackle. So he's the 3rd overall right tackle according to PFF.
Love to hear it.
So I think we got to go back to what I was saying with the not mentioning him in the conversation. Very interesting there. A guy that I don't think gets enough credit. Also worth mentioning, he didn't play a ton, but Joseph Noteboom came in at 22nd. Which is
he's gonna
really darn good.
We'll talk about it more when we talk about the upcoming season, but he's gonna be playing a lot.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised with Sewell. I loved him in the draft, but he did not have a good year last year.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that he improves. I also don't think that Detroit is doing anybody any favors.
It should be better this year. I think they moved him to right tackle permanently.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have an issue with this list. Like I said, I think it's pretty solid. I like pretty much everyone on this list. I think it's offensive tackle is tough. It's one of those positions that's like hard to argue, like I said, for different reasons. But
Stanley and Armstead haven't been able to stay healthy, so I'd probably take them out and put Havenstein and then probably Mailata.
I really want Stanley to. I feel like when Stanley's healthy, he's so good, but like you said, he just like.
Well, Armstead is. I mean, he's never healthy. Miami literally shelled out 5 years, $75 million deal to a guy that is never healthy.
I know.
So, good luck. He's 30 years old.
We'll also see what happens with Orlando Brown if he stays with the Chiefs.
Yeah, I'd imagine he will.
I think he will, but it's just been in the news.
3rd straight Pro Bowl.
We'll see. But guys, that's going to do it for the rankings. The last thing that we want to talk about, well, we don't really want to talk about it. It's unfortunate. Is Bobby Brown. If you guys haven't heard, Bobby Brown, the defensive tackle for our Los Angeles Rams, has been suspended for 6 games for using performance-enhancing drugs. He tested positive. The news came out today. Jake, this is a big bummer in general. We never like to hear that anybody's doing that. Yeah. You don't like to hear that anybody does it on your team. And Bobby Brown was expected to have a much larger role this year, basically rotating in behind Aaron Donald and Greg Gaines than it was, and Ashawn Robinson. Then Bobby Brown was kind of that 4th guy. Jake, what do you make of this news?
Well, I think, friend of the podcast, Elijah Garcia's life just got a little bit easier. I think his opportunity is there for the taking. Let's look at what really happens when it comes down to losing Bobby Brown for 6 games. It means that the Rams can put him on the suspended list. So that does open up a spot on the 53-man roster, which is very important moving forward. And it's something that does need to be addressed because, in the past, maybe the Rams might have cut, a certain player. Now this opens up the door for them to potentially hold on to somebody that wasn't going to make the roster. So I think when you look at it, you got Ashawn, you got Greg Gaines, you got Aaron Donald, that's your starters. But then you look at Michael Hoyt, who was on the roster. You look at Jonah Williams, they were on the roster. Marquise Copeland had an interception in the wild card game against Arizona. So that is, definitely something worth mentioning. That's a guy that they've continued to develop, UDFA out of Cincinnati. So I think he probably gets the biggest boost of this. It's a pretty big opportunity for him now to slide in there as the fourth man, because I think they really wanted Bobby Brown to do that. And it's not to say he's done. Bobby Brown will come back after the suspension, probably have a role. But it is very interesting. And it might also breathe life into Ernest Brown, the fourth, who, didn't make the roster last year, was really upset about it, and, stayed on the practice squad and didn't get an opportunity really. So, that might give him an opportunity. But Elijah Garcia, if this opens up the door for anybody, it's definitely him. And I think he's going to make the most of it. I think we're going to see some good stuff in preseason, because I think Bobby Brown can play in preseason, if I'm not mistaken. He just can't play in the regular season. I don't think you can't serve your suspension in preseason.
Well, right, but yeah, I'm not entirely sure, but that would be very strange to like let a guy who's on PEDs go play in the preseason.
It would be
So
strange.
I don't think that that's allowed,
Yeah, I don't
right?
know how that works, because yeah, I just don't know how that works, um but it does open up another body, and so I do think Elijah Garcia would be the favorite to make the roster now. And I think they'll end up keeping everybody in the defensive line room. I mean, now when you really think
Yeah.
about it, why wouldn't they? You have, let's see, 3 starters, then you have Hoyt and Copeland, that's 5. Then say you hold on to Williams and Elijah, that's 7. So they could do that. It might be a little steep, but I like the idea of keeping Garcia, and then maybe, Williams or Hoyt, you try to sneak onto the practice squad. Ernest Brown is the most intriguing to me, because, he is a 5th round pick from last year. Somebody they seemed really excited about and just did not take that step. So it's another preseason, it's another training camp, and we'll get to see if he can make the most of it. And I think the problem is with him is that we don't know what to classify him. You know what I mean? Like, is he an outside, edge defender, or is he going to play, the interior? And I think that's something the Rams have to figure out. He's listed at both. Anytime I see him, it's like he's listed at defensive line, he's listed on the outside. So I think there's versatility there, but I also think that versatility can turn you into a tweener and somewhat go against what you're doing. So very intrigued how this affects Ernest Brown, who might, like I said, might breathe life back into him onto the roster. But the big beneficiary, no mistake about it, is Elijah Garcia.
Yeah. I agree. I think that Marquise Copeland is going to slide into Bobby Brown's role, kind of that fourth guy. And then right after that, I think is Elijah Garcia. So I think it's really interesting to see. I mean, including Bobby Brown, technically the Rams have about 9 guys on that interior defensive line if you're going to classify Ernest Jones on the interior. But like you said, it is, I watched him in college. I think he kind of did a little bit of both. I felt more that he was like a defensive end.
He
So we'll
gave Logan
see.
Bruss some he gave him
Yeah,
some fits.
he did. So
So, you know.
we'll see. But yeah, I mean, obviously, really unfortunate. I know the Rams expected a lot out of Bobby Brown. I know that I did. I was excited to see him take a bigger role, and he certainly can when he comes back. It's just for the first 6 games of the season, we will not get to see any action from Bobby Brown. But guys, that's going to do it for us. Thank you so much for tuning in. Episode 455 of Downtown Rams. As always, if you like what you hear, please like and subscribe. You can follow Jake on Twitter at JKBogan. You can follow me at the Alexis Kraft. We'll be back next week with another episode of Downtown Rams. And guys, once again, just want to point out that you can get 20% off and free shipping with code DTR at manscaped.com. That's 20% off and free shipping with the code DTR at manscaped.com. There are so few perfect summer days. Don't let hot, sweaty balls ruin them. Stay fresh, clean, and smelling good with Manscaped. Thanks, guys. Stay safe, take care, and we'll see you soon. Oh, and go Rams.